do or die time. 1,000 encounters. That's it.
Mihawk vs. Shanks is one of the most controversial topics in the One Piece community. The fandom is divided, not just over which of these former rivals is stronger, but over whether it even matters. Some people are happy to argue power scaling as long as one person disagrees with them. For others, power scaling is a nuisance when the characters and themes are what really matter. But the two sides don't need to be separate. The question of who is stronger reveals more than you'd think about who they are, and the answer can change the themes of the story. So today, I want to look at the subject from a new angle. An angle that will help us understand and answer the debate, and connect back to One Piece's themes. To do so, we have to talk about power scaling, games, why Zoro is a swordsman, what Mihawk and Shanks represent, and how power scaling is both inherently flawed and a part of how One Piece conveys its messages. Only by combining those can we seek the truth about Mihawk and Shanks. But first, be aware. Notorious pirate Buggy the Clown has fallen into a well. It is very dark and scary. Subscribe to the channel so that we can mail him a ladder and help him escape. And like the video if you instead want to place a large stone atop the well and trap him. Mihawk vs. Shanks is a tired topic. The discourse has been done to death. But by giving the debate a close examination, we can look for a new angle. That can help us understand not just who is stronger, but what that means. First, let's clarify the term strength. By strength, I mean the general quality that allows you to consistently win fights, through a combination of raw strength, skill, haki, and anything else. I'm not talking about who has better muscles. With that out of the way, let's review the common arguments around Mihawk and Shanks. Both of them have enough feats to confirm their top-tier status, but not enough for a definite comparison. A lot of clashes, not a lot of full fights. The lack of evidence forces us to go off of implications. So if they were comparable as rivals, then Shanks should be weaker without an arm. But there's no way to prove who grew more since. Emperors are above warlords, but those are just labels. And Mihawk recently became something of an emperor himself, the power behind the clown. And the stronger of two rivals is often 1 centimeter taller than the other. That is evidence for Shanks. But Mihawk has a smoking gun. I mean, he won't use a gun, he's a swordsman, but that's just it. Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman, and Shanks has a sword. If Shanks is stronger, then the story has lied, and in a way that devalues Zoro's dream. The possibility that Shanks is a better swordsman than Mihawk is off the table. In this video, we won't be considering it. Most of the ways around this are awkward. Some claim that Shanks is a haki man, but haki is part of swordsmanship. Some argue he's stronger but less skilled, and that's just even sillier. But Mr. Morge made a better case in a great video 5 years ago. He argued that the world's strongest swordsman must beat anyone in a sword duel, but can lose to people with other powers. Winning with a devil fruit doesn't count. So if the story reveals that haki masters can shoot beams, then Shanks can win. The problem is, this solution is a what if. Haki beams are not real, and may never be. For now, it's just a theory. But I still agree with that video's logic. To be a stronger swordsman, you have to win with swordsmanship. Enel isn't a better swordsman if he holds a sword while zapping Zoro. The issue is if our only criteria for swordsmen are the sword and not using powers. That leaves us wondering if haki can somehow disqualify Shanks. But I think there's more to swordsmanship than that, because to me, Shanks doesn't feel like a swordsman. He doesn't feel like the same type of fighter as Mihawk or Zoro. It could just be a feeling. But if something is causing that feeling, then that something could allow him to beat Mihawk. I'm not here to argue that Shanks is stronger. We can't know unless we see them fight. But I want to see if it's possible for him to be stronger, without contradicting Mihawk's title. Not with theories or Haki Man nonsense, but by seeing if Shanks truly diverges from swordsmanship. To explore this, we need to reframe our view of swordsmen. We see swordsman as a category of fighter, where we give the strongest one a crown. But swordsmanship is more than that. Swordsmanship is a fighting style, a philosophy, and most of all, a game. When I call swordsmanship a game, I don't mean it's casual, Friday night fun. I mean that swordsmanship has rules. In the book The Grasshopper, Games, Life, and Utopia, the philosopher Bernard Suits defines playing a game as follows. To play a game is to attempt to achieve a specific state of affairs, using only means permitted by rules, where the rules prohibit use of more efficient in favor of less efficient means, and where the rules are accepted just because they make possible such activity. For example, sumo wrestling is a game. When Luffy challenges Urashima, his goal is to knock him out of the ring. The rules permit Luffy to push or throw, but not to strike the ears or eyes. Those would make it easier for him to push Urashima out, but it wouldn't count as winning. The rules are what turn the act of pushing Urashima out into winning the sumo match. In the book Games, Agency as Art, the philosopher T. Wen puts it like this: by itself, getting a ball through a stupid little basket has no independent value on its own. I don't go to the basketball court late at night with a ladder and spend hours passing the ball through the hoop. Getting the ball through the hoop is worthless outside of the constraints and structure of the game. Beating Mihawk is nothing on its own. You have to win with swords and can't just poison him in his sleep. Although, considering Mihawk's bathroom doesn't have any toilet paper, it's a miracle he hasn't already died from an infection. But Zoro does bathe only once a week, so maybe bad hygiene makes a swordsman stronger? That aside, we have a goal, permitted means, and prohibited means. And with those, fighting in and winning a sword duel is made possible. The activity is created by the constraints and structure of swordsmanship. In other words, by the rules. Framing swordsmanship as a game will help us in a few ways. It clarifies what the world's strongest swordsman is, shows how Shanks can beat Mihawk, and teaches us about Zoro. The world's strongest swordsman is an ambiguous title. It's unclear if you can't have powers at all, or if you just have to primarily use a sword. There is no one correct way to define it, but the rules provide a useful angle. Rather than say who is a swordsman, they define what actions are swordsmanship. You can win a fight however you want, but to win a sword duel, you have to follow the rules. Non-swordsmen can win a match if they follow the rules, and the strongest swordsman is the one who can win against all others. But if Shanks can only win by breaking the rules, then he can't win the match. He doesn't get the title, because the hardest possible sword duel is still against Mihawk. I'm not saying you have to agree with this view. It's all subjective, and it's fine if you just don't vibe with this framework. But I want to see where this angle can point us. Because for each new rule, we can check if Shanks would break it, and if that would help him win. The rule against other powers wasn't enough, since Hakimen aren't real, but we can look for more. But the goal is not to disqualify him with arbitrary rules when everyone still considers him a swordsman. The rules should describe swordsmanship fairly. Shanks' actions have to genuinely not be swordsmanship. So to make sure the rules are accurate, we have to build them with evidence. And luckily, One Piece directly tells us what it considers the rules. After all, wounds on the back are a swordsman's shame. Swordsmen do not turn their backs. They face danger and never run away. Zoro and Mihawk confirm it. More than anyone else, those two demonstrate what true swordsmanship is. And other characters show us what swordsmanship isn't. During Wano, King disarms Zoro with a serrated blade and then punches him. And Zoro says, "You never called yourself a swordsman." King has a sword, but his actions are not swordsmanship. These scenes confirm that in One Piece, swordsmanship is more than just using a sword. Fighting in the wrong way can disqualify you. By studying characters like Zoro and King, we can identify the rules. In response, the rules will show us who Zoro is. The rules you choose to follow say things about who you are. And the rules of swordsmanship only define who the strongest is because people like Zoro want to prove themselves. And each rule will say something about what doing that means. Once we have the rules, we can loop back to Shanks and tie it all together. But for now, it's time for Zoro and the 5 rules of swordsmanship. We already know Rule 1. Fight with a sword. No using other weapons or powers. Swords are required by definition, and most true swordsmen don't have devil fruits. But Rule 1 also limits the body. King shows he's not a swordsman in part by punching. Kabaji kicks Zoro's wound, and he's all about not using real swordplay. And Hachi, who doesn't understand true swordsmanship either, uses a body slam. By disallowing those things, Rule 1 equalizes the match. When there are no advantages, winning can actually say who's stronger. To prove yourself a stronger swordsman, you need to outsword the opponent. This rule looks simple, but looks can be deceiving. What exactly is a sword? How are they shaped? Are Helmeppo's Kukri's swords? Killer's punishers? Killer's scythes? I would say no, but Zoro uses a scythe in a 3-sword style attack. Is that allowed? Comment whether you think a scytheman can be the strongest swordsman. Surely the 12 supreme grade blades are all swords, but they include Whitebeard's Naginata. Kaku claims to use 4-sword style with his Tempest kicks, and I'm drawing the line. Legs are not swords. unless you're Mr. 1 or Shiki. This seemingly binary rule was actually a spectrum, and so are other powers. Some of them just aren't allowed. Gravity is not swordsmanship, even if it did defeat Kuina, so Fujitora can't use it in a duel. But what about Kinemon? His fruit doesn't affect combat, but it would if he fought in a blizzard. He'd be warm while his opponent is cold. So how cold does the weather have to be for his power to disqualify him? Brook's power makes him lighter, so is that unfair? And I don't even know if Mr. 1 is a swordsman. There are always going to be edge cases, for all of the rules, but it still means something to follow them perfectly. Rule 1 is also about commitment. Zoro has the resolve to